right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on identifying government business opportunities. My name is Coco Price, and I'm on the product marketing team here at FiscalNote. I'm excited to introduce our panelists today. We are excited to partner with McGuireWoods Consulting on this webinar. On the line today, we have MJ Keats, Laura Purrier, and Ryan Curry, and I will hand it over to them in just a minute to do their intros. Before we start, just a couple pieces of housekeeping. If you have any questions, please feel free to enter them into the chat functionality within WebEx, and we will save some time at the end to answer those. Everyone besides the panelists will be muted throughout the call, so the chat is the best way to enter your answers. And with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to MJ to kick us off.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As Coco mentioned, my name is MJ Keats, and I'm the Business Development Manager at McGuireWoods Consulting. McGuireWoods Consulting is a full-service national government affairs firm, and we have offices in 7 states. And the reason that this is important is because the topic of this webinar is one of the services that we provide that crosses over all of our state government affairs team as well as our federal government relations team. The reason, what brought us to FiscalNote is that we were having a lot of interest among our leadership as far as establishing a practice in which we could help our clients identify and then pursue procurement opportunities at state governments where we have a footprint, and those states are Illinois, Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and Texas. And we also have an office in DC, of course, for our federal team. And so the stars aligned, and we had already been working with FiscalNote on having a national bill tracking and monitoring collaborative relationship, which we also service our clients with. And then they started talking about wanting to branch out and work on a procurement platform. So we were happy to be their partners in this endeavor, and so that's what's brought us today, brought us here today. So McGuireWoods, we do offer this specialty service in the procurement space, and what this allows us to do is to help clients. We identify for clients potential areas that they may want to consider as far as contracting or procuring their goods or services with state governments that either match their footprint or they may not necessarily have a presence in that particular state, but they're able to, of course, conduct business in that state. So it's a great way for our clients to think about different ways outside of the box, in addition to ways that they're already servicing their own clients as far as broadening their business model and their revenue base through procuring services. And so one of the big things that is our strength is the relationships that our lobbyists hold with different government officials across state agencies. And I will have ask Laura Purrier. She's one of our assistant vice presidents, and she's based in our North team in Raleigh, and she has a significant portion of her practice that focuses on assisting clients with procurement opportunities. So I'll ask her to share how she engages with government stakeholders in this area.
Hey, I am Laura Purrier. Like MJ said, I am in the North Carolina office, and a significant portion of what we do in our office is procurement work. And so North Carolina has a bit of a convoluted procurement process in general. There are overarching procurement contracts, and then there are carve-outs for different agencies and sub-agencies and that kind of thing. So you kind of have to know everybody everywhere in order to have a successful procurement practice, and it can be a little daunting, but we have clients who deal with healthcare, transportation, infrastructure, disaster relief, IT, all kinds of things. And so we're juggling a lot of balls here. But typically what we do is we, you just get to know people within the agencies and you work on building relationships there. And sometimes you hear about contracts that are going to come out before they come out. And sometimes you find out with the rest of everybody else just through state agency websites. But it does take a significant amount of time to kind of monitor upcoming RFPs and existing contracts and that kind of thing. So that's where this FiscalNote tool is really exciting us, and we are hopeful that it will really pare down the amount of time we have to spend on research for procurement stuff.
Yeah, and thanks, Laura. And this is Ryan Curry. I lead the professional services practice at FiscalNote. In addition to the great software and platforms that, McGuireWoods Consulting and other clients are familiar with, my team is the one that provides this procurement solution to our clients. And so, we're excited to kind of catch up about this stuff today. And moving on to the agenda for today, we can give everyone a little bit of a preview of that, and really want to make this just a discussion about, one, what is this procurement solution? How does it work? But I think two, importantly, how does McGuireWoods Consulting put this into practice for themselves and for their clients? But then we also want to leave everyone on the webinar with what we all believe to be some of the common challenges and what we believe to be some of the solutions to those challenges, whether we have identified those in working with our clients and using our solution through the procurement tool itself, and to leave that with kind of the end of today. We'll also take, like Coco said at the start, some time to answer questions at the end. But kind of digging into some of this stuff, I think a good place to start, and MJ and Laura, you already kind of mentioned this, but maybe going into a little greater detail of how your firm organizes its government contracting practice area around the markets with which you engage, and kind of exactly how you work with the clients to help them identify these opportunities.
Sure. So we have individuals that we have two individuals in each of our state teams, our state government affairs teams, that we're having work with us as far as monitoring and really running the part of the practice that overlaps with their state government. And what we've done is we've been able to use this platform in a way that's been useful, even despite the fact that every state has its own look and feel to the way, not only the way that RFPs are announced, but how they can be obtained and how more information can be located. At some states, there's very limited access to this information, and so, and in other states such as Florida, the information is rather robust, which of course we appreciate because it makes our jobs, a little bit easier. But what we've been able to do is having two people in each of our states really take the reins in looking at what clients we have, not only that serviced by that state team, but by other of our state teams as well, and looking at what services and goods that they provide, and then from there trying to find procurement opportunities that would fit, their business model, their goals, their benchmarks for revenue increases, and so it's looking at a lot of different aspects of not only the client's business model and services or goods that it provides, but as well as the opportunities that are there, and really trying to piece the puzzles together and kind of marry them up together when there seems to be a good fit.
One of the things we had talked about leading up to this webinar is that, for you all, you'd mentioned when it comes to government contracting, in some cases, it's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know. And I think that's what makes our partnership kind of a good collaboration, because for FiscalNote, we are a data company, we're a technology company. We want to empower you with information, but I think, what you all kind of do is take the ball and run with it. and, start engaging some of those stakeholders. And I wonder if you had any thoughts about kind of how the team is mobilized to that process. What makes for, good stakeholder identification and engagement among maybe kind of the state teams?
So I can speak more from a business development perspective, and then I think Laura would be, will have some really good thoughts as far as, being the boots on the ground. But for us, being able to look at the different state platforms and identify, to first find out, who are the major, what companies hold the big contracts, what companies hold, a lot of the middle-sized contracts, and then what are the smaller companies that are holding on to, the lower dollar contracts, but for them it's a very significant portion of their annual revenue. And then looking at that landscape in like a one screenshot type of lens to then figure out, well, where's our sweet spot? So, where do our clients currently fall in this gradient? And, can we help an existing client, expand the work that it's doing in procurement, not only in that state through different agencies, but also then, look at other state opportunities and find out and try to determine, what contracts have an expiration date that say, 3 months ahead of time, or even 4 or 6 months, because that's the time to really start thinking about, when is that contract going to end, and when, back it up, probably 2 months and determine when could that RFP hit the street, because if we don't know when it's going to hit the street and then get moving and supporting the client's efforts to speak with the right decision makers and influencers before, the RFP hits the street, then they're not going to be at the strategic advantage that we hope to put them at through the services that we can provide. And I know Laura has a lot of experience helping, clients keep contracts and also prospects find new contracts, and so I'll let her take it from there.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. So it's really helpful being able to see, like you said, the whole of state government at a glance and kind of get the big picture and be able to step back. It's sort of hard to do when you have a state as big as North Carolina or, bigger. But on top of that, like you mentioned, the predictive stuff is really the value add. So being able to say, hey, our contract is going to be running up, which is something you should know already, but the reminder doesn't hurt. Or, hey, our competitor's contract is going to be wrapping up here soon. Or even more than that, being able to look at other states and see trends and things that may be coming to your state before they hit. That's a really big way to engage existing clients, prospective clients, and kind of get a leg up on the competitors. It's a good mix of all the above.
Yeah, no, thank you both. I think, one of the really cool things we've gotten the opportunity to do as we've worked with your all's teams is kind of build out something in really close partnership with each stakeholder and kind of make sure that what we are deploying for the team meets their needs exactly. This is one of the things that the professional services team at FiscalNote, we get the opportunity to do this kind of fun work a lot where, it's not necessarily an out-of-the-box solution, even though it is, fairly easy to use. It's something that is really designed to meet the needs of the team. And I wonder, it's been a lesson, sure, the kind of state-by-state variation and even differing needs state-by-state for the teams at McGuireWoods Consulting. And I wonder, MJ, if, you could talk a little bit about what drives those different needs, and especially from a government contracting process standpoint, why that is the case at all.
Sure. So, as I mentioned, if we were able to show you, pictures, and I think maybe in a little bit screenshots of our Florida platform, every one of our state platforms looks completely different from the other one. And, at first, this was kind of took me by surprise, but then once I, from a business development perspective, began to understand that, the platform is going to reflect the information that is available And then from there, what we can do is we can customize based on the additional information that we need, which is going to probably, require more a slightly different search parameter, or if we're looking for, we want to have kind of a loose alert set up to let us know, when a particular type of service is going to be procured in a state at a certain dollar value. We have a way of kind of carving out the niche and then focusing on in that particular area through some of the customization work that FiscalNote's been able to do for us once we had the initial state platform created. And what I think what makes this successful a venture for us be so successful with FiscalNote is that we've been able to work with the development team on a state-by-state basis, and so they've spent a lot of time on the phone with the stakeholders in each state who are going to be really incorporating this type of work into their government affairs practice. There's some team members like Laura who already have a substantial amount of clients in this area, and then there's others who have a few clients that they help, maintain relationships with and kind of give them an update on when the RFP is dropping so that they can, of course, be among the first to respond and have it in their hands. But as we've been able to go state by state, and we just had the team members from Georgia on yesterday, and, we have government affairs professionals who, in Georgia, they currently are waiting for an RFP to drop, and what they're having to do prior to, seeing the debut rollout for their Georgia platform is, they've got to keep calling the procurement, they're contacting the procurement office for the state and kind of keep their finger on the pulse that way. And so this has opened a lot of opportunities for us as a firm as well as for our clients. And, as we see the dots being connected and the pieces of the puzzle being put together as a result of, the constant gleaning for more information and kind of think, okay, so this is where we need to go in this direction so that, we're strategically positioned and we're ready to, pull the trigger and keep that client, top of mind of, if they currently hold a contract, then we want to have them, maintain it and possibly, increase the revenue on it. But we also want them to be aware of their competitors when they're thinking in terms of how can they, continue to secure that work with the state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what I've really appreciated about the conversations we've had with each of the kind of state stakeholders, but others as well on your team is that, when we kind of sat down and approached this, what you had indicated was a priority was really kind of a client-first design mentality and something that, at the end of the day is going to help you to better serve your clients, and using that priority, I think, is how we've come up with some of the state-by-state design variation. Not every client who buys this wants that level of kind of customization, but, if that's something that is needed, I think it's been a really enjoyable exercise for us. And maybe this is a good kind of segue into the next slide, which is starting to get into some of the features of the solution itself. And I think we can go ahead and go to the next slide after this. What we're going to show are, a somewhat abstracted version of this. This is not the example that McGuireWoods Consulting uses, but it should speak to some of the capabilities. And what I'm going to try to do is kind of give a high-level rundown of some of the feature sets associated with this. And, MJ and Laura, you all feel free to interrupt me, if there's something you all want to talk through as well. But for this, fundamentally, on the opportunity identification, this is the predicate thing, the most foundational thing that we do is gather the information for our clients. We gather this stuff from various state websites, other state sources, to produce the kind of detailed information you see here every single day. This is something that updates as new information is published. And what information is included here, it's probably too small for most folks to see on the webinar, but it's basically at a high level, what is kind of the program, the bureau, department that is, putting a contract out there. If there's an incumbent, who is that? And then some of the actual kind of contract mechanism information. So, if we know who kind of the contract officer is, or if there's a relevant point of contact, we'll include that as well as some of their actual contact information. When is the contract up for renewal? What's the dollar amount? Stuff like that, which that all is pretty table stakes stuff, I think. Where we go a little beyond, and I think where it really becomes useful for our clients, and, MJ and Laura, obviously you all jump in if you want, but I think the important thing here is all the information and content you see is based on things that our clients have communicated to us that are the things that actually matter to them and nothing else. So, one of the first things we do is we sit down and we say, give us a comprehensive list of, the program categories, the types of things that we want to keep track of here, whether that's state by state, and it's different in each state, or across the board. And there's no need for our clients to kind of set up filters or do searches. Every time you get in this dashboard, it's only going to be signal, and we try to reduce the noise to the maximum extent possible. And so when it comes to identifying these opportunities, I think that's an important time-saving mechanism. I wonder, MJ or Laura, is that something that you've seen bear out in your own, initial use of the tool? Is that the kind of thing that would save your team time?
Yeah, so that everything that you just said is a big time saver. I mean, I don't know how other states' websites are structured, but North Carolina, all of our data is just all over the place. I mean, I know you guys know from culling the data and putting it together, but it's a lot of monitoring. It's a lot of pages bookmarked on my home screen when I open up Safari. It's a lot of just checking and combing through, teeny tiny font. So this is helpful in that it aggregates everything together. It makes it visually easier to understand. You've got charts and graphs showing how much of a presence a company has in each state, or how much money of their total budget and agency is spending on a particular contract, or that kind of thing. And that's helpful. But it also is really beneficial in terms of knowing, like I said, when something is going to be coming up, because that, in terms of saving time, that helps me, because that's another 2-hour meeting I don't have to schedule to go sit down with somebody in the bowels of a state agency and say, hey, what's on the horizon, what's coming down the pipe, what are you guys going to be looking to do in the next 2 years? That's, those meetings are fine and they're beneficial, but I have that information ready on a screen right in front of me with FiscalNote. So it definitely is a time saver, especially helpful during a session when I don't have a lot of time to spare.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, and, that's part of what led to our creation of this, is that a lot of our current clients, are doing this off the side of their desk. This is not kind of their full job. They actually have a portfolio of issues they have to engage with outside of trying to drive, business opportunity. And so, for those clients, we know they have a hard time doing both. I mean, it's really at least 2 jobs there, right? And so that's one of the reasons why this came about. Moving on to the next slide and some of the features, I mentioned some of the federal and state content. I'll let us switch slide. Yeah, there we go. You'll see more of this as we go along, but there is a really rich data set to the maximum extent possible between the federal and state government. The federal data, of course, is very rich, and there's a ton of information that we can gather there. State by state, part of the thing that Laura described is that you really do have to, if you're not using a tool like this, you have to kind of hunt around a lot of different places. Even if you're using third-party tools, some of them are good to use. Some of the free ones are, can be a little clunky. The goal here is to have both the federal and state data as standardized as possible, aside from the kind of variations that are beneficial, and use and create a common language state by state and among the team, so that, when you're talking about an opportunity in Florida versus North Carolina versus Georgia, you're speaking the same language about the process the same way. And I think that's what, our content allows folks to do. The other thing that you see here are some of the competitive analysis that we have and some of the insights associated with that. So, there are a couple charts here. You can see that, if we want to do an assessment for a given state or, across the country or in the federal government of who are my competitors, if I'm a technology platform, maybe I'd want to see, who are the top technology companies working in a state. You can see the breakdown of who has what in terms of dollar amount, but also which agencies are they engaging with most frequently. And then if you want to kind of dig into that, you could start to explore those individual contracts that they hold. The kind of bubble chart you see in this is one of the visualizations we use to just give a kind of quick market depiction. But where clients are operating and going after a limited number of contracts, I think this becomes valuable. At the state level, in some cases, we can even see of state dollars, kind of where are the cities that those dollars are going. So if you wanted to do a more specific geographic distribution, you could see, if I'm a school supply manufacturer, if I wanted to see how many opportunities were there in Atlanta, Georgia versus Athens, Georgia, that would be available because there may be repercussions for stakeholder engagement depending on, the flow of those dollars as well. Going on to the next page here, just for the sake of time. This is exactly what I was just describing, and some of that stuff where, if we wanted to look at California, for example, and see, where did all those IT spending dollars end up? This is the kind of thing that we could depict. And, if you can't see this in the slide, but if you were to hover over one of those dots, you can see here's the total amount of dollars, here's kind of the leading incumbent in, San Francisco, and then you can start to kind of click in and explore some of those other areas that we've already highlighted. And going on to one more slide, I think we have one more on this. Yeah, that's right. So, I think Laura was mentioning how important it is to kind of plan ahead. And that's one of the things this tool allows us to do. You've already seen how it kind of aggregates the market landscape, whether it's geographically, by government stakeholder, by competitive stakeholder. But, having the ability to kind of filter down and see if I wanted to get to only those contracts that were renewing in the next quarter, that's really easy to see. And those associated insights will be shown, regardless of kind of how we cut the data. A lot of our clients, this one we'll get into a little later, but a lot of our clients, are on a planning schedule 6 months, a year in advance, because especially at the federal level, some of these large contracts, you really have to get in there early. But that's kind of an overview of the solution. It is kind of an interactive dashboard that our clients get. And these are just a couple examples from, different builds of this we've done. But, I think the combination and the aggregation of the data does produce a lot of time savings. I wonder, MJ and Laura, is there anything else that you all would want to highlight in terms of the actual, features of the solution itself?
Sure. You're very right. You're very correct, Brian, in saying that, every state has a different look and feel to it. And when we were able to provide you with names of existing clients as well as names of state agencies across, in every state where we have a footprint, you took that, your team took that information and really melded it together. So what we gave you was, a lot of written information, and your team was able to turn into graphical elements that are easy to understand and I think have facilitated the process of getting buy-in from our team members as far as, wanting to, roll up their sleeves and really get into this. And so, and I think that's really important because oftentimes, anything, related to procurement and government can be very hard to understand and take a lot of time to parse apart, but this has saved us a lot of time, and I think it's going to create, more great business opportunities for our clients as well.
Yeah, well, thanks. And to that point, oh, go ahead, Laura, sorry.
I'm sorry, no, you may be getting to this later, but just in terms of functions of the service that being able to do the custom research and reach out to your team directly and say, hey, I do not have the bandwidth to dig into this. What can you guys find? Can you set me up an alert on this particular issue? whatever it may be. If I've got a company that's thinking about moving into the state and I want to dig in more into what they're doing, or if I want to dig more into a specific contract that I think looks weird or whatever, I love that I can reach out to you guys and have somebody dedicated to doing that.
Yeah, no, we love doing that too. I think that's one of the really great things about, FiscalNote's kind of new-ish partnership with CQ Roll Call, right? We have all this expertise in-house about the appropriations process and the budget process now that, to be super honest, makes our ability to answer these questions a lot easier and better than it was 2-3 years ago. I think when it comes to that kind of stuff, again, we're probably going to say this a million times on the webinar, but, the earlier the better. We have a lot of times where we're doing, assessments and analysis on appropriations bills and even kind of amendments to appropriations to help our clients understand that. And so it's a really fun way for us to partner, because I think that really does move the needle for a lot of people. Getting into some of the, coming back to less about us, more about that you all, and McGuireWoods Consulting, we can go ahead a slide, I think, at this point. One of the things that I really have liked learning about your team is the way you all, are kind of aggressively pursuing best practice when it comes to internal team communication and just kind of coalescing. You have all these different state folks, coalescing all of them around one strategy to execute. And, I wondered, as you are continuing to constantly evolve this process, what are some of the things that are top of mind when it comes to, the whole team working together and communicating? I know we have some places in the solution that allow for that, and I'm interested in that, but also I'm kind of just interested in your all's philosophy behind that.
Sure, I'm happy to take a stab at this, and Laura, feel free to cover anything that I may have not thought of. But I think where we have a nice advantage is that, with our sweet spot being in government affairs relations, the essence of our business has been, defending bills that, may benefit a particular client, or, working to defeat bills that would negatively impact their business model. And so we already have a team that's very, very skilled at looking ahead at issues and trying to determine trends before the client has figured it out, because they're being negatively impacted by, a particular type of legislation or regulatory piece that's come down the pike that they weren't, aware of, and it's kind of blindsided them. So all of the communications skills and the ability for our folks to really, to look through, to look at things through the lens of, really kind of projecting forward and, talking about, if this is happening now, what's the trend in surrounding states? Because often, what happens in neighboring states is going to move, is going to continue to move, across the country. So with that already in place, and then also knowing exactly, we understand our clients' business and the industry in which they work. So we can use that information that we have just through a long-term relationship, and also an understanding the goods or services that drive their business, then, from there, so we've got a full picture of, what we're working with as far as the client's offerings, and then, looking kind of in our crystal ball of sorts to figure out, well, if this state is starting to, amp up appropriations for, emergency, services, then there's going to be more RFPs related to various, possibly construction, redevelopment, even, restoring of transportation infrastructure that may have been, destroyed or negatively affected as a result of a weather occurrence. And so we're able to think in those terms, and just having conversations with our clients about, where are you thinking of taking your business? And, have you thought about, even though you're based, say, in Florida, there's states say, North Carolina and South Carolina that are starting to, procure services and have more funding behind them in areas that you're already in Florida. So let's, find out what's coming down the pike as far as looking at end dates of contracts and then backing up the timeline from there and finding a way to, make the right introductions at the right time and, and build brand awareness, amongst influencers and, and the decision makers to really give our clients the added benefit of having done the legwork and having had time to do that so that, they're not just a name on a cover letter. They have a face with the person that's going to be involved in making the decision.
Yeah, one of the things you said that I think is worth circling back to is, you talked about kind of identifying the trends and how these things, diffuse throughout states and from the federal government to the state government, et cetera. It's not dissimilar, from the broader kind of legislative affairs, government affairs use case, I think, of the things that you want to know about. For most of our clients, what I think we hear most frequently are, one, they want to know what these trends are, how issues are moving or becoming more material, and starting to matter. But the other thing is they want, to know and try to, take advantage of or prevent some of these, lightning in a bottle kind of moments where something suddenly comes up and it's a huge deal or a huge opportunity for them. They want to know about that where it is completely outside a trend. And, that's not different than what might happen in procurement. I think some of these, especially in like the lightning in a bottle kind of ideas, you can see something, materialize relatively quickly. And I think both this solution and kind of what, what we try to do as a company generally is to account for both of those, almost archetypical use cases and the things that, I think keep people up at night when they're worrying about this stuff. And so as a result of that, a lot of the very first conversations we have with clients, and we had a version of this with you all, is we want to know about, what do you perceive as your risks as an organization? What are the opportunities? And I wonder, as you all are engaging with your clients, is that kind of a similar discussion that happens at the outset as you begin to work on behalf of your clients? Or in kind of what does that relationship look like once you get, off and running?
Laura, I think you could do a great job with this. I kind of have the 10-word or less response, but you're there on the ground, so I'm going to let you take this one.
I don't even know how. MJ, you give your 10 words, and then I'll jump in.
Okay, sounds good. All right. So a lot of times in business development, the way we, will even find out that there's a company, big, small, or medium-sized, that could be impacted by a issue that's going on any state legislature or regulatory level. We find about the issue typically first, and then we're able to match it to companies that would be impacted by it. And then, we might have, like in one state, we may have a client, in that industry sector on that particular issue, so there would be a conflict, but then we can look to another state, where the issue is trending and say, hey, our team has worked to, write a bill and it got it passed, affecting, robots on, delivery robots. And so there's a bill coming out in another state that's, against, fighting against that emerging market trend. And so, then we would be able to let, the company know, hey, look, we're okay in this state, but in the next state over, it's not looking so good. And so really just sitting down and finding out, all of our government affairs professionals, I think, are really good at finding out, not only understanding the industries that we work in, but also how our clients, how they work to service their clients. And, anything that's going to impact their business is like of utmost important to us. And yes, a lot of times we're able to look down the road a few miles, especially before a session starts. And those sessions in different states, they're all over the place. And some states are in session for what seems like ever. I think that's one of those states, right, Laura?
Yeah, we are still going strong.
Yes, you are. You'll be going strong right through Thanksgiving, I think. But, other states have, 60-day sessions. And so there's a lot of time for, looking at the issues, the bills that are going to be introduced, and kind of, really kind of doing the map as far as what type of business, either whether we're already representing them or we're not, needs to know about this, and where do we go as far as strategy is concerned to make sure that the outcome of that bill or regulation, is in the best interest of our client. And the same goes for the procurement opportunities. Sometimes we're able to use all of the information that we can glean from our, our platforms, that FiscalNote has built out for us. But, there's always going to be that instance where there's that one or two that sneak in unexpectedly and didn't quite hit the radar. Maybe it's a new opportunity and it's been intentionally kept quiet. I mean, Laura, do you ever have experiences like that where you come across something that really wasn't well known or kind of more obscure?
Oh God, yeah. Things that are hidden in things and covered in a bunch of blankets. Yeah, of course. I think it helps with that. I think, like you said, it helps kind of as a predictive model and being able to see trends in other states, especially for North Carolina. A lot of the southeastern states tend to pass legislation or take on new initiatives together. So being able to see that kind of stuff coming down the pipeline, and also being able to use that to pitch new clients and say, hey, we see this happening in other states. We want to provide that opportunity for, companies that are impacted by that to operate in our state, or keep, whatever the trend is, from keeping them from operating in our state, or whatever it may be. So exactly what you said, MJ, the whole predictive part of it is probably the most valuable thing there.
Yeah, and that's one of our strengths is our multi-state, mindset. And so I think that's why this, wanting to have this procurement practice is at the right time. We have the boots on the ground, and, we have a very broad-based viewpoint when we look at a lot of different issues, not only on the legislative issues and regulatory, but also in the procurement world. So we want our clients to be able to have as much potential to build their business, and we can help them do that, through different, through all the teams that we have. And like I said, we pretty much have the Atlantic coast covered, and that even being up in Illinois and Texas, those are really big players too as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that last point segues nicely. I think it's another slide here, but, I promised that we would leave everybody with, our understanding at least of what are some of the best practices, some of the things we've seen that are common challenges among our clients, and what McGuireWoods Consulting is doing to help them overcome that, how FiscalNote is helping them, and how our clients are, doing that themselves too, of course. But, to kind of your point earlier, one of the things is the challenge of just separating signal from noise. I mean, this is true of procurement. This is true of, general government affairs. It's really true of life, I guess, when you get down to it. But, one of the things that we think about a lot when it comes to how to do this most effectively is fundamentally, whether it is, on the FiscalNote side or, in partnership with a client organization, having everyone kind of circle up and think through, what makes either a contract or an opportunity or a bill or regulation or whatever, what makes it material, what makes it impactful, for better or worse, and really understanding and being able to prioritize those effectively. I mean, I think this is a thing where a lot of the folks that I've spoken with, everyone is always so busy and, doing their best to put out fires. It's hard to take time to think through that kind of stuff. But that's where I know that we get really excited when we're able to organizations to come in and take a little bit of the lift of doing that for them and help think through some of those things. And I wonder when it comes to just issue spotting or, opportunity spotting in your all's case, is that the way that you all are thinking about this? Kind of how do you, identify strategic priorities as a team?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, issue spotting is really, the backbone of the work that we do. And, from working across states and with all our teams from a business development perspective, I ask our consultants and they've been here and been doing this a whole lot longer than I've been here and in this world. But, I asked them, I was like, ask your clients one question. What's keeping you up at late at night or keeping you up overnight right now? And that issue not only is important to that company's strategic plan, but also to their bottom line. And, from there's just so much information out there, and the key is being able to access the information quickly and interpret it in a way that, to really kind of break it down so that the client isn't spending a lot of time spinning, its wheels, and, we're able to provide, sound and quick direction, and then kind of chase the ball down the court and keep passing it, as necessary. And so much of the work that our government affairs professionals do is really, is based not only on knowledge and experience, but on the relationships that they've cultivated with, folks in legislatures and different agencies on the state level, as well as we have a robust federal team as well, that crosses industries, far and wide, including healthcare, emerging technology, and a whole lot, agriculture, education, and like forestry included. So all of our industries are covered, and just the industry knowledge that our team brings to the table, they're able to apply that, and also just their inquisitive nature when looking at, procurement opportunities as well. So I think that's what's made this partnership, work as well as it has, is, like you said, you have the information and we have the relationships, and we're able to put the two together, and we've been able to see some nice results for our clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And speaking of kind of, well, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say us being boots on the ground and maintaining those open lines of communication with legislators, agency executives, our peers, that kind of thing, and then being able to come back and visualize that data, whether it's with bill tracking or with the procurement software or whatever it may be, but being able to kind of get the heads up on the ground for things that are coming, and then being able to come back to the office and sit down and square that away, and being able to kind of package it up nicely for our clients is like MJ said, it's the kind of perfect combination.
Yeah, well, and to that point, I wonder one other thing maybe we can leave some folks with this thought is, when it comes to locking down some of these contracts for your clients, or, going after some of the future opportunities, what are the recipes for success that you all see when engaging, with the government stakeholders? That question makes sense.
I would say, do you mean like how are we able to lock down new clients, or?
Yeah, like, say I was starting my own kind of government contracting practice, like what would you say are the key things that I would need to do to ensure best success when it comes to this? Because I think, every state's different, every agency might be even different, but, what are some of those universal things that, you find time and time again to be successful strategies for winning this type of business?
I would say knowing everyone, knowing everything, and knowing it first, to put it as simply as possible.
Yeah.
Being able to provide a service that you can get, lobbyists are a dime a dozen. There are a lot of us out there, but I think something that McGuireWoods is, really provides is being able to have a lead on the other firms that are out there, being able to have, a good tracking system that keeps us posted and us able to send alerts to our clients or prospective clients or whatever, and then having an idea of what kind of legislation is going to be coming in the next couple of years, and being the type that can easily and quickly communicate that information, I think is one of the biggest values you can have, aside from the obvious, having a lot of connections and understanding the landscape and all that. But anybody can do that. Being able to do it first and most effectively, it matters a lot, especially during session.
Yeah, and I would add to that I think it's really important, if you're starting, like in the example you gave, Ryan, as a government firm, as a startup, I was like, from the start, you need to know who your competitive competitors are, and you need to know exactly what companies are offering similar goods and services and what contracts do they hold, because once you start, dipping your toes in, into their sea, they're going to notice that, and also, so then the competition is really going to take on a life of its own. And if for new firms that are, having held their first, contracts and are coming up for renewal, it's really also important for them to know who the unspoken competition is, as far as, where the companies that are holding, smaller contracts, that may be looking at the contract, you're the incumbent on as a next move in their business venture, to kind of climb up that procurement chain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's absolutely the case. And what we've seen in our clients, I think just one, kind of having good input data and being able to effectively use it to engage stakeholders in a way that's going to resonate with them, to achieve the outcome you want. I mean, that again, this is something that's not limited to government contracting or procurement practice. I think it's across the board. But, these are themes that we see time and time again. So I appreciate you all walking through some of those. I know that we all could talk about this all day. I do think we wanted to save a little time at the end for questions. And Coco, I don't know if we had gotten any that, you'd want us to answer, but we're happy to try to answer as many questions as we can in the time we've got remaining.
Sure, that sounds great. So yeah, for those of you on the phone, you are all muted. So the best way to submit your questions is through the chat functionality on WebEx. So you can go ahead and submit any questions that you have now, and I will read them off. In the meantime, we do have one question that seems to be focused for you, Ryan. The question is, how is this tool different from other procurement tools?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one that we think about a lot. So there are a couple key differentiators that I'd point to. The first thing is just kind of the FiscalNote style of engaging with our clients. Certainly there are others who, are able to kind of deploy bespoke solutions, kind of engage with a team on a consultative basis. But, the way that we do this is kind of built from the ground up as a technology tool first. And I think that allows us to realize some cost efficiencies compared to competitors in the market as we deploy something that's, pretty heavily customized for our clients. I would also add kind of the way we, ingest the information, both from a technical standpoint. We're very lucky to be at FiscalNote because we have a ton of tools that aid us in the information collection and gathering that are some of the, best-in-class tools to give the most signal and not noise. A lot of the machine learning and AI processes we've developed for other purposes have been used for this. So kind of there are some technical advantages and technological advantages. But I think otherwise, the way we depict these things, whether it's geographically, some of the other insights we are able to share with our clients are a little different than what I've seen from some of the competitors in the market. And the fact that, you kind of get something that, you don't have to engage with a lot to get the information out that you want. There's not a lot of, like I said, search configuration, filter configuration that you need to do. This really helps, I think, our clients, realize the value from this tool as quickly as possible, and that's always going to be our goal. I know you said we had one question, Coco. I didn't know if any more had come through.
Doesn't seem to be. Are there any more questions in the chat? So if anyone has any, feel free to type.
If not, we can. Yeah, I was going to say, if not, we can give everybody a couple minutes back here, which I think everyone values. But if anyone has any questions about this anytime, feel free to follow up. We'll email you back. We're actual humans, so we're happy to connect with you at any. But otherwise, I did want to thank MJ and Laura for joining us. It's great to speak with you guys as always. And I think we're always really excited about the partnership, and I want to thank everybody for attending the webinar and listening to us as well.
Yeah, I'd like to thank all of our panelists for participating and also for those who were able to call in this afternoon. Just a reminder that the recording of today's webinar will be emailed to you after this session, so be on the lookout for a link to that. And with that, we'll let you go on with the rest of your day. And thank you, everyone, for joining.